Hi everybody, how's it going? It's Miriam. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a story that I've been wanting to tell for a very long time. March 22nd of 2016 was a day that I will never forget. It was the day that I woke up from surgery and my right foot was paralyzed from the knee down. The surgery had nothing to do with my feet or my nerves or anything like that. And from what my doctor thinks, my neurologist, somehow during positioning for the surgery, my sciatic nerve was stretched or compressed. And I've been wanting to tell this story for a very long time because when I was going through this and I was at my worst with it and I was desperate to find answers and somebody out there that would have some kind of hope for me that I would get better, there was nothing that I could find on the internet that was a story exactly like mine or somewhere close to how the injury happened. My specific injury was very different because it was a stretch or compressed nerve. So there wasn't a whole lot that the doctors could tell me. They didn't know. It wasn't the worst kind of injury that you could have because the worst would be the nerve actually being cut into, but it was pretty serious. And they didn't really have any answers for me. They didn't know if I would ever be able to use my leg again, if I would ever gain function or sensation in my leg. And it was a very scary, sad time in my life. I remember in the worst of it thinking, if I just get better, if I'll just get a little bit better, I'm gonna tell my story so that I can give somebody out there hope and they can know that there is some hope, because I know that I desperately searched the internet and searched everything that I could trying to find somebody that had a positive outcome. And I didn't find anyone, but I'm gonna get into it from the beginning. So as I mentioned, I went in for an elective procedure. It had nothing to do with my foot. I don't know what happened. I was obviously asleep. I was under anesthesia. But what I do know is that I walked into that facility with a perfectly working foot and in the best health of my life, because I had recently lost 40 pounds about 2 years prior to that. I was working out every day. I was really healthy. I had just had a baby and I was back to my pre-pregnancy weight within 10 days of giving birth to him. I was very active and I was just living my best life. And I went in for the surgery and I remember waking up from the surgery, and in my kind of days coming out of anesthesia, I couldn't figure out why it was that my leg was hanging off the bed, but I couldn't figure out. I remember thinking, like, why can't I just pick it up and put it back on the bed? And I don't remember if I told the nurse or if I told my husband, but I told him, my leg hurts. I want to put it back on the bed because it was just kind of hanging off to the side. And I can't remember who it was because I was still waking up from anesthesia. Picked up my leg and put it on the bed. I kept telling him, I don't feel my foot. My foot is numb. So they were just telling me, oh, it's just, from the positioning, it's probably a little numb, like when you sit on your foot, just, shake it off, have your husband give you a massage when you get home, and you should start gaining sensation, within a couple of hours. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay, they know what they're talking about, I guess, So I went home, but something still felt off. My foot was completely numb. My brain had no idea that my foot was attached to it. I felt nothing. It was just this, like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just this nothingness. I could not feel my foot at all. You could light a match on my foot and it would burn through, and I felt absolutely nothing. And I couldn't move it. I can remember looking at it, trying to make that connection, and it wouldn't move. And so when they went to transfer me from the bed to the wheelchair to wheel me out to the car, I couldn't bear any weight on it because I had no control. And it was just this like wobbly thing, and I couldn't step on it. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna break my foot, and I don't even know what I'm gonna do to it. Like, I'm gonna seriously hurt myself. We got home that day, and I just laid down, and I got laid down on the recliner, and I was thinking, what, something's not right. Something isn't right. And this, I called the surgeon again, and he said, come into my office tomorrow, and we'll talk about it. If it's still a problem tomorrow. So obviously the next day I woke up and I could still not feel my foot. And at that point I knew this isn't just, oh, you sit on your foot, you got to shake it off. Like, no amount of shaking in the world was going to fix this. So he evaluated me, he looked at me, and he recommended that I go see a neurologist. And luckily they got me in the same day. I left the surgeon's office and I went into the neurologist's office, and the neurologist kind of poked and prod, and he did some tests, some reflex where they hit your knee and my foot would not respond. He tapped the bottom, poked me with needles, soft, deep touch. I couldn't feel anything at all, couldn't move anything at all. Asked me if I felt any pain, any tenderness, nothing. I just couldn't feel my foot. So I was very worried. And at the time he diagnosed me with drop foot. And he said that from the movements that I had lost, the functions that I had lost, he could tell that it had to be somehow the sciatic nerve was involved. So either it was stretched or it was compressed, and but he wouldn't really know until they did a nerve conduction study. So he prescribed, he sent me to this orthotic place, and I had to wait a couple weeks to see them. They gave me a boot that I wore that helped, so that, because my foot was dropped, so when I would walk, instead of being able to do heel toe, my foot was just kind of dropped like this, and I would have to pick it up and it would just kind of flop, and I had no control of it. So this boot held my foot so that I could walk and have that clearance when you walk, so that your toe isn't pointing down. And it would also stabilize my foot on the side, and I could slip it into my tennis shoes and then put it on and strap it, and I could walk somewhat normal. So after that, he also sent me for an MRI. The MRI showed, I had no kind of spine damage or anything like that. It wasn't my spine, because I guess they thought that maybe it was just a back injury that I previously had, and somehow it was aggravated during surgery. But my spine MRI showed that I had no problems, that everything was perfectly fine. So it had to be, something that didn't involve the spine. So then finally the day came that I had the nerve conduction study, and I had read up on what a nerve conduction study was, and I really anticipated this because I thought that this would be the test that was going to give me all the answers. So I thought for sure that this nerve conduction study was going to give me some answers and tell me, okay, this is how long it's going to take, because depending on how bad the injury was is how long it would take to heal. And if it was anything worse than just like the gelatin that's around the myelin sheath around the nerve that kind of protects the nerve, I might be saying this wrong. It's been 2 years since I was like deep core into learning all this stuff, so I've forgotten some of it. But if it was the jelly stuff that kind of protects the nerve that just got damaged, then it was just a matter of a couple of weeks before it would regenerate and fix itself so that the nerve could conduct the signal correctly. But if it was worse than that, then the nerve had to die down and then regrow from the original site of injury all the way down to, the end of the extremity. And nerves, if I can remember correctly, they grow at about 1 millimeter a day or 1 centimeter a day. I can't remember exactly, but they grow incredibly slow. That nerve had to grow all the way to my tippy toes. So I obviously wanted to know, what kind of nerve damage it is, because then I can kind of have an idea of how long it would take me to get better. Oh, silly me. I went and I had the nerve conduction study, and I remember the girl, turning up the dial as hard as she could and putting the needles in there and asking me, do you feel it? And I could tell from her face that she was thinking, holy crap, like, she can't feel anything. That's what I was thinking. That's what I thought she was thinking. And she's like, you don't feel that? And I was like, no, I don't feel anything. So I just bursted into tears because I had had a little bit of hope that this study would tell me something positive, and my whole world just came crumbling down. And I saw the doctor, and the doctor said, I don't know. I don't have any answers for you. I don't know if the nerve will recover, and if it does recover, if it does regenerate, I don't know how long it will take. And then he told me the worst part about this is that sensory nerves can come back whenever. So you can gain your sensation whenever. But when it comes to motor function, if the nerve doesn't make it back to the muscles in less than 2 years, then the probability of you never being able to use that muscle again, because the part of the muscle that receives a signal from the nerve, that part dies off if it doesn't, if that connection isn't made within 2 years, then you might not ever be able to have that movement again. So you might not be able to, to ever, to move your leg again, or your foot from the knee down. And I was so scared, because it was, you have 2 years to heal, and whatever doesn't heal in 2 years might not ever heal. I remember going home that day just with all of this worry and all of these bad thoughts in my head, and just this sadness and this feeling of defeat, and it was definitely a hard pill to swallow. I was hit with the reality that at 29 years old, I might, I lost the use of my right leg, and I might never gain it again. And I might never walk normal again without a brace. I might never be able to chase my children and play with them. I might never be able to wear sandals or high heels again. And that was a very sad, sad thought. And I immediately went on the internet again, just reading stories, and there was just so many negative stories and bad things, and there was nobody out there who this had happened to, who had a compression or a stretch injury, and that were saying, oh, I'm good and I'm fine, and it's been a year and a half and everything is perfect and I'm back to normal. But nobody was exactly like me. So I desperately searched for somebody who had some positive story, and I couldn't find it. So I decided to get a second opinion, and I went down to the University of Miami, and I saw a doctor, and he told me, I can't tell you for sure that you will recover, but one thing that I can tell you is that I've seen people who have kicked their foot through a window and sliced their nerve in half, and their leg is functioning again, or at least 95% fine. So I left that doctor with a little bit more hope, and this was University of Miami, a doctor with a ton of experience on nerve damage. I was very confident, and I felt a lot better, So I remember telling myself, okay, it's just it's a matter of time. If they can recover, I can recover. And I had actually seen 3 doctors. The most positive one was him, and he had the most experience. And all 3 of them had told me, if anybody's going to recover from this, it's going to be you, because you don't smoke, you're a social drinker, you are relatively healthy, you're not diabetic, you don't have blood pressure problems, none of those diseases that can hurt healing. So if anybody's nerve is going to recover, it's definitely going to be you. So you were the best possible scenario for a good outcome. It's just a matter of wait and see if it actually recovers and grows back. So this was very early on. And at this point, I hadn't started the worst of it, which was the pain. The first month after the injury, I felt nothing. As I told you, you could light a match on my foot and I could feel absolutely nothing. But then I woke up one day, and as the day progressed, I started feeling something different, and it was kind of like, it felt like electricity, and I didn't know what it was. And in the beginning, I was kind of like, oh, is this something? And is it coming back? And then I realized quickly that that was just the beginning of the worst part of it all. And I didn't think it could get any worse because my foot's not working. How much worse can it be? I woke up and I can't use my foot. But oh no, it got worse. I remember it was the day of my friend's birthday, and we went to an escape room. And that whole day I had been kind of feeling these like electric shocks that were bothering me, but I pushed through it. I hadn't been out of the house to do anything fun in, I think, a little bit over a month. And I wanted to go out. I wanted to get out of the house. I didn't care. But then that night when I got home, I sat down on the couch that I was relaxed, all of a sudden I kept getting these like electric shocks, like this, like it felt like when somebody, when you hit your funny bone and you get that like rush of electricity that shoots up your arm. And it just started getting progressively worse to the point where I was feeling it all of the time, 24/7. Imagine somebody bumping your funny bone over and over and over again, all day long, all night long, 24/7. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. Tylenol didn't touch it. The little bit of tramadol that I had left over from the surgery didn't touch it. And I didn't want to continue to take the tramadol. So I went back to the doctor and he prescribed gabapentin, which was it's a medication that somehow, it's specifically for nerve damage amongst other stuff. So he prescribed this and I took it for 2 days, but I remember that at my second day, I started, and I don't know if it was just because I was in the deepest depression that I've ever known in my life, because I'm not a depressive person. I never knew what depression was before this. And so I don't know if it was that or a mixture of the medication or the medication, I didn't take it well. But I remember just crying and feeling this like weight over me and this sadness. And I recalled my mother crying and telling her, I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be by myself. Come here. So my mom came over and I blamed it, I blamed it on the medication because that was the only thing that had changed. So I threw them out and I didn't take them again. And I made a choice to just deal with it, deal with the pain. And it was the most, I gave birth to my son with no epidural, no kind of anesthesia, 6 hours of labor with nothing. And I thought that I would never experience anything more painful than labor. And I was wrong. There is nothing out there, in my experience, worse than nerve damage pain. It is something that is just all day long pain. It consumes your entire world. I spent about 3.5 months in this excruciating pain. And from the minute that I would wake up to the minute I would go to sleep, barely go to sleep because I couldn't sleep, my entire day revolved around things that I could do to alleviate the pain. So I would wake up in the morning after a horrible night's sleep and right away I'd get in the shower in the tub with hot water, and then it was cold water, and then I put my foot in cold water and hot water, and I'd use pads and I'd lay down on the cold floor, and then I'd go outside and I'd lay down on the hot floor, and I'd lay on my left side with pillows. I'd lay on my right side with pillows. I'd find a position on the recliner. It was all consuming every day long. All I could do, I was obsessed with how I was going to get rid of the pain. And anytime that I found maybe 1 or 2 seconds of pain-free, it was godsend. And I also started using the TENS machine. As soon as that would turn off, boom, the pain would wake me up again. So this went on for about 3.5 months. Now, little by little, the pain started going away. And gradually, I didn't notice it right away, but the days were getting better. I now have no pain at all. I went on with my life. I went through a lot of depression and I was very sad and I felt completely defeated. But eventually, I had incredible support from my friends and my family, and I kind of shook it off and I told myself, I can make the stories of the people that I've heard online that have had worse things happen to them, how they were now in life didn't depend on whether their injury healed or not. It depended on the attitude that they had about it. And I remember reading a story about a girl called Danielle. She had a boat injury in Miami, and her leg was cut. And I saw her article, and I looked up her Facebook account, and I ran into some vlogs that she had online. And even though she didn't have function of her foot, and she had to wear a brace, she was still traveling the world, and nothing was stopping her, and she was still jogging and exercising, and she moved on with her life. I remember thinking, all I've got is, nerve damage from my foot down. If these people can find a light at the end of the tunnel after being quadriplegics, or having their entire nerve severed and their foot, and something really bad, worse than what happened to me, I have no excuse. So I went back to work. I, moved on with my life, and I was happy. And there were things that I couldn't do. If we went to the beach, I couldn't go up a steep hill. I had to wear my brace to the beach. I couldn't, a lot of challenges, a lot of physical challenges. You don't realize how much you need your one foot, till you don't have it. So, but my life moved on. But I remember one day playing with my son on the floor, and I had both of my feet up on the wall like that. And I was kind of pushing down just to see what would happen. And I had shorts on, and I saw my calf muscle twitch. And at first I looked at it like, is this real? Is my imagination wanting me to heal so bad that I'm imagining things? So I do it again, and my foot moves again. It took an incredible amount of concentration for my brain to tell that muscle to do that again. And finally I couldn't do it anymore. And from what the doctor tells me is that, when it's recovering, the signal kind of gets weak. Okay, sorry, I'm back. I had to move the camera because the lighting was coming in through the window. The sun is setting, so it's kind of in my face and a little weird. So that was my first glimmer of hope. And then the doctor said it could only get better after this. And then it was finally around July of 2017 that I could move my foot, that I could pull up on my foot. And that's in the way that like the nerves are distributed, that's the last movement that usually is recovered in those kinds of injuries. So, and it was a very weak being able to lift, so I still needed to wear my brace, but I could lift it a little bit, and then my leg would get tired, so I'd have to drop it again. And all of these movements came back. Obviously I had a lot of weakness. I hadn't used the muscle in a year. So I had to go back to physical therapy and work it a little bit. And the more I would walk, the more I would do, the better it would get. I went from being very in shape and the best shape of my life to going up a flight of stairs and being completely winded because I hadn't done a whole lot of physical activity because of my injury. So I was very motivated, and I had gained about 30 pounds in this time because I have the metabolism of a sloth. And the only thing that helped me before that kept my weight off was working out. I would do cardio and I would run 3 miles, and I couldn't do any of that. So I gained a lot of weight, and I obviously haven't lost it, but I will. This is the year, guys. I didn't think that I was going to be able to walk normal again, and here I am. I don't need my brace anymore. I stopped using my brace in September of 2017. I can't wear high heels. I can wear wedges, but I have to be very careful, and I always hold on to my husband's arm if I walk in them, unless they're really low. It's still numb. The foot is still, when you touch it, it's still kind of numb, but if you pinch it, it hurts, and it hurts worse than any other part. I can feel pain very well, but soft touch, I don't feel. For the most part, I'd say 95% better than I was the day after my injury. And I am just so glad that I am where I am now, that I don't have pain. And I remember that I used to say this to myself all the time, you know, I don't care if I don't ever get to use my foot. I just don't want to be in pain for the rest of my life. And I got more than I asked for. So I'm just incredibly thankful to God that I am where I am now. And my life is back to normal. I wanted to post this to give some kind of inspiration to somebody who's maybe out there and doing the same Google searches that I was. I know that I can't be the only one out there that's going through this, but I hope that if you come across this video, know that I don't know if you will recover, but I can tell you that I did, and that it was very rare and it took a long time, but I did recover. I'm not 100%. And I want you to know there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Everything does pass, and your attitude about it, and just realizing that you cannot let your pain determine who you are, and just changing your perception will make a world of a difference for you. And that's all I can say about that. And that is all I can pass on. You know, I know that there are people that are worse off than I am, and their stories were incredibly inspirational. There's quadriplegics out there, and they have positive things to say, and they're happy, and they're moving on with their life. And I would tell myself this, and that's important, that you continue to motivate yourself, and you try to find the light at the end of the tunnel, and you think of all the good things that you have in your life. Like I kept telling myself, okay, so I don't have the use of my leg, but I have two beautiful children that are happy, who run to me every day with excitement when they come home from their grandma's house or when they come home from school, and they're looking forward to me being happy. And those were the things that would push me through. I have an incredibly supportive husband who, God bless his heart, made rice beans and picadillo for 3 months straight, and that's all he ate because I couldn't cook. I was in so much pain. I could barely wash my hair. And you know, he was there, and he would make lunch for me and for the kids. He did what he needed to do to hold down the fort. And he did have help from my mother, and his mother was so much help with our kids. And my father-in-law made meals for us too, and I had a lot of support from my friends, and who would also make meals and bring them to me. And I can't complain about my friends and family. I was still alive. I at least had one working foot. I had the hope of maybe recovering, you know, just because the doctor said he didn't know. He didn't say for sure that I wasn't going to recover. I still had my job and an incredible boss that was very supportive through the whole thing. And there were so many positive things in my life at the moment that I couldn't just sit there and concentrate on the negative. I had to focus on the positive. And that's all I can pass on. Just focus on the positive, and it will make a world of a difference. I am so glad that I got to share this story, and that hopefully I will inspire someone, and I will give them that little glimmer of hope that I searched so desperately for. Thank you for listening to my story. You know, even if you're not going through it, it feels really good to be able to share it and put that out into the world. A positive story that it's a great outcome out of this. And I think I have, you know, I'm not 100% healed, but to me, and you know, I don't need to be. I am happy where I am, and I am blessed that I am where I am today. Bye guys. Have a wonderful day.